Jason,
How are you?
very well. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. Good to be
Awesome.
here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So let me give you a an official introduction,
Cool.
and then I will hand it over to you to talk about Morning Brew and some of the things that you have prepared.
Sure.
So Jason Schulweis is the SVP and head of brand partnerships at Morning Brew. He oversees the revenue organization, which consists of sales, account management, integrated marketing, strategy and operations, and copy and creative functions. He's had extensive experience as the leader of media and event companies like MediaLink, Live Nation, Thrillist Media Group, and Yahoo. Morning Brew is a media company with a mission to empower modern business leaders through engaging, accessible content. They recently launched Marketing Brew, which should be of interest and relevant to many of you. And here, Jason's here to help us understand direct-to-consumer media and what he calls the era of delivery. Jason, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to throw up the some slides here. Let me know if are they up and working?
They are up and working.
Oh, awesome. Okay, very cool. So Stu, thank you so much for that intro. I think I think you nailed it. And in addition to Marketing Brew, I think Retail Brew is probably of great interest to this crowd. But for us here now, I'd love to talk about direct-to-consumer media and the era of delivery, or a story of growth, evolution, and modern brand love. So, as Stu mentioned, my name is Jason Schulweis, the Senior Vice President, Head of Brand Partnerships at Morning Brew. I am also very obsessed with modern brands, direct-to-consumer media, and the idea that we are in an era of delivery. And I know that Webb has already gotten some love, here, but I'm a big fan of his writing and his work, and in particular his stuff around linear commerce and modern brands. And while the intent and essence, I think, of this quote really speaks to brands in the retail industry, it's hard to ignore the parallel among and convergence of all consumer brands, including those in media. And so here, let's dive into modern brands. For our purposes, we'll focus on modern retail and commerce brands and also modern media brands and the intersections of those things. Now, what's cool is that each of them have come a very long way kind of throughout history. We'll take more of a macro look and then kind of dive into what's been more recent. And so, for retail throughout history, we've seen the evolution from, boutique and local general store to big box department store to internet big box to owned e-commerce funnel and an owned e-commerce funnel and stack, such as like, at Shopify. And in media, we saw the evolution from newspapers and magazines to radio, to television, to digital destination, to, what is direct-to-consumer media now, which I think is really email and podcasts. And so if you look at, kind of that last jump and that last bit of evolution, the most exponential growth has really happened in this past decade. And that has been, again, the transformation from, internet big box to direct to consumer in retail, and also digital destination to direct to consumer in media. Now, given that we've just spent, a decent amount of time on retail and commerce, I want to talk to you about media and why these things aren't so different. And I want to take everyone back, all the way back to 2010. And so in 2010, media was really thriving in this era of destination. And so, you think about the internet, the history of the internet is really the history of news in a pressure cooker. And in the beginning of the consumer internet, we had desktops and destinations. Now, since we're talking about a time frame of 10 years, I also happened to be at Yahoo in 2010. This is an image of the Yahoo homepage in 2010. And we were able to sell that 300 by 250 on the homepage for hundreds of thousands of dollars because literally hundreds of millions of people went to yahoo.com every day. Now, as I would say, newer media companies started to hit their stride, that was amazing. But with that success came an abundance of content sites. And at the same time, as access to the internet became more mobile, we saw a huge push for distributing content instead of housing it at a destination to better meet people where they were spending their time. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit collected and disseminated the content that was created on, New York Times, Vox, Thrillist, CNN. The platforms were in control, not the creators, and hence this era of distribution. And so if you think about 2018, when the adpocalypse began to unfold, we saw, media companies scramble to recover a lot of lost impressions and traffic, and everyone saw major hits to their on-site traffic as Facebook prioritized friends and families' content over, the news and content organizations. And I think, three internet forces kind of happened. There was the fragmentation, the great fragmentation, where other, call it like old guard of new media companies tried, I think unsuccessfully, to recreate the destination model. And again, as my career has kind of tracked along this evolution, I was at Thrillist in 2013 and 2014, and kind of got to see this very firsthand. There was also a cultural zeitgeist moment where, as social media and the rising usage of social media really took off, that stole an unfair share of the attention of consumers, which drove media companies to distribute their content on these platforms. That was the adage, fish where the fishes are, in media terms. And then, of course, capitalism. I think seizing this opportunity, social platforms greatly reduced the ability for organic reach, and content distribution became like entirely pay for play and arbitraged. And so today, and I think, particularly in the last few years, we've hit an inflection point that is really centered on curation. And so if you think about it, like when you have this much content and this many ways to get it, you end up with a lot of noise in where you get the content and how. And I truly believe that the solution is curation and a more direct relationship with your audience. And, to kind of simplify it a little bit, it is very much built on this idea of quality, trust, and ease. And if you think back to what we were talking about earlier with Webb's quote, a modern brand, the definition of a modern brand is well-designed, purposeful, and familiar. And so again, I think there are a lot of parallels to how we think about, modern retail brands, modern media brands, and, the convergence of those things as just modern brands. So now, and especially in the last few years, I believe we're in an era of delivery. And that means truly meeting your customers where they are without excess intermediaries. And taking a step further, as I mentioned earlier, email and podcasting, I believe, represent, the ideal solution in this era of delivery. It's direct to your inbox, direct to your ears, and all they require are apps that are already endemic and built onto your phone and primary device. There's no extra downloading. There's no change to consumer behaviors. There's none of that. Those are very much your home screen and interface with, email in the inbox as well as audio. And so, as I mentioned before, this moment in media is absolutely parallel to the moment that is happening in retail and commerce, and where most modern brands, really all modern brands, across the board thrive because of the direct relationship that they have with their consumers. And I truly believe also that it is more about the relationship, like a true relationship, than it is about data. Like really knowing who your consumer is, not just how old they are and where they look, but really what makes them tick. DTC brands build relationships with their consumers. DTC brands are obsessed with building brand love and loyalty. DTC media in the era of delivery does the same. Media companies are becoming strong brands in and of themselves by being able to build this brand obsession and next level two-way engagement. So I believe there is a huge opportunity for a modern solution. And that consists of both, both types of modern brands, retail and media, really starting to work together more. And I believe that opportunity to be that of a kind of, call it a collapsed funnel, call it a full funnel, but the ability to hit all of your KPIs in one fell swoop. I believe newsletters have created a full funnel ad solution. And then when we, direct-to-consumer media companies partner with other direct-to-consumer brands, we're able to accomplish in one spot what takes other platforms and other methodologies multiple spots to achieve and deliver on. We're able to do effectively awareness of a brand, interest in a product, create path to purchase in just one email. And that type of environment is enabled when you have 100% of a reader or a consumer's attention and trust. And so with that, in sum, and modern brands across retail and media will continue to look like and partner with one another to unlock an entirely new ecosystem that will fundamentally change everything. And in this ecosystem means big wins for modern brands, both in retail and media, and especially consumers. And so with that, it was a short and to the point, but I thank you, Stu, so much for having me on, and would absolutely love to open it up, connect with folks, and go through some Q&A now if that works.
Awesome, Jason. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about what you ended with, which is this collapsed ad unit, and being able to kind of build a brand, acquire a customer, and hopefully sell to them, in one sort of fell swoop. Can you provide a little bit of color around, maybe an example? You can use a hypothetical company, but what does that look like to start?
Yeah, I think it's about the canvas, right? I think on a lot of, traditional CPA based, media spends and strategies, a lot of it is like very hyper targeted. It's like, a product that you're potentially going to like from a brand that you may not know. Mm-hmm. But, like for just using an example that we work with a lot of apparel brands. We work with a lot of finance brands too. But if you take apparel, for example, what we're able to do in one email is create incredibly compelling copy that, of course, is kind of like native to the tone and voice, include a compelling image. And then what you get with a big image and, just 150 words of copy is the ability to tell what is a full funnel story in introducing the personality of a brand and a product that is going to speak to you. And I think the value there is that there exists an emotional attachment now that you don't necessarily get if you're just looking at, the numbers, and if you're just looking at, the NCPA off of one, particular, spend or media tactic. It's cool. I mean, what we've seen in terms of, a lot of these brands that are starting to shift, budget away from what have been, more traditional, acquisition and purchase channels into, partnering with other kind of like-minded modern brands has been really cool. And I mean, we funnel a lot of the feedback that we get back from the partners that we do partner with, where our readers are saying, I love this brand. I love the way that you talk about them. Like, I will continue to buy from them. And I find the creative interesting and it speaks to me. And we are lending, not just lending, but we're sharing that relationship that we've been able to develop with, a lot of readers with a lot of the brands that partner with us.
Got it. And I'm not a marketer. So maybe this question doesn't make sense, but brand marketing and performance marketing, sort of evaluated on different metrics. Mm-hmm. Brand marketing metrics are maybe a little squishier. How do you sell this collapsed ad unit?
Yeah.
Against what are probably, I'm guessing, mostly performance driven options?
It's That is a phenomenal question, and I think I may have that up on my wall somewhere.
Nice.
It's I mean, the long answer is that it's like very much an ongoing conversation, because it's part education with a lot of brands that may have siloed marketing, brand marketing and lower funnel, marketing channels and budgets, and folks that are running, and running those strategies and budgets. And so, for us, we're able to do a couple of things like right off the bat. One, yes, we can measure clicks and help with conversion. We can also run, more brand health, brand surveys, which allow us to actually measure more upper funnel, metrics. Now, what we love to do is actually look at those types of things over time. And so it's not necessarily just off of like one-off, where yes, a lot of brands will look at, okay, actually how many purchases did I get off of this one thing? And so it's a lot of that education is, trying to look at what the partnership is between modern brands over time. And that could be like, 3 email sends, 8 email sends a quarter, whatever it might be, to show that over time, a consistent number and even more people are going to convert, send after send after send. And the kind of the proof point for that is that for a few brands that we've worked with, we've also created branded content, and they've been able to push out, branded content at the top of the newsletter. Right. And people can like read a little bit more about that brand on morningbrew.com. And then what we've actually seen is higher conversions after we do something like that. Which I think is kind of like proof in the pudding, where if we're able to, in our voice and in one email tell this story, about a brand and introduce products, and then give readers, and consumers a very, easy, very easy way to then check out of, to buy a product with a brand that they already love.
Yep. Awesome. And so a question from the audience, going in a different direction. Market's noisy, and curation seems to be the answer. What happens when the market becomes noisy with curators?
I love that. It's something
I've got like dozens of new subscriptions to Substacks. I have a friend who started a Substack media business.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dan Shipper with the Everything Bundle. But yeah, what happens when there's just a ton of curation?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think like with content, there's good curation and there's bad curation. I don't think all curation is the same.
Yeah.
I think the way that, we, for example, select the content that we select, I think the way that our writers and editors, who are phenomenal, I want to put them up with any writers and editors anywhere, the way that they contextualize and take what is curated and put that into, a Morning Brew, tone and voice, while still, giving all, credit and links back to, where we sourced it from. And then, taking it one step further, we've started to complement a lot of that curation with our own content. And that can be, a lot of the original, what actually launched one of our newsletters, which was, your guide to living your best quarantine life, which was, yes, like a curated list, but the way that, we put it together, I think, was something that was very special. And even most recently, Ryan Duffy, who is our emerging tech brew writer, produced an incredible, 5G guide, which was a lot of original, content. And so, I think short answer is there will always be a lot of content. There will always be a lot of curation. There is definitely a right way to do it and a good way to do it. And I think you need to, really focus on that and be cognizant of complementing and supplementing, that curation with your own voice, your own content, your own personality.
Yep. And for the collapsed ad unit and working with Morning Brew, what types of brands do you think best leverage that model? Like who's the best fit for a Morning Brew? And noting that when I say Morning Brew, I mean across kind of the portfolio. Presumably someone marketing to retail brews can be different than your technology newsletter. But yeah, how do you think about who's the right kind of fit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to your point, we view all of the different, Morning Brew franchises kind of independently, because with emerging tech, with Retail Brew, and especially Retail Brew and Marketing Brew, those are industry specific newsletters and cater to, this B2B audience and this B2B sell. And so I think with those, and I'll tackle those first, like what we've been able to do with, putting a lot of SaaS type companies and ad tech and martech, and being able to tell very compelling stories to help them, not just say like, hey, this is I'm a brand in in the martech space. Here's who I am, and here are my solutions. We're able to tell a story on that end of the spectrum, but also with inside of Morning Brew, apparel and finance are probably our biggest categories, and a lot of them do want to drive to thought leadership or specific products. So we're able to do that, on a very regular basis. And, a lot of the apparel brands have seen just immense success on our platform, which is great to see, because I think it's a really cool, also like now, safer environment than, some of the other, more like UGC social platforms, which, has been, more recently kind of driving the lion's share of those spends.
Yep. And when you think about the Marketing Brew and the Retail Brew,
Yeah.
Individually, who should be reading those newsletters?
Yeah. And as I mentioned before, they're very industry specific. And so for retail, that is written for, the retail professional. Marketing Brew is written for the marketing professional. And, to kind of double click into that, within marketing, for example, we kind of set an initial, few different kinds of like audience types. And so that would be brand marketers, growth marketers, media professionals, and agency execs. And that is like who we are writing, this content for. And I think, the feedback that we've gotten so far, I think we kind of hit that right on the head in terms of, the audience data that we've actually gotten back, because, 2 weeks ago when we launched it, for anyone who signed up early, we had a really phenomenal, virtual event. And with that, we, were able to capture a lot of really interesting registration data. And so, we kind of have the proof point for, who has signed up. And even in that, in that virtual event, the fact that we had, James Rowe from Adam and Eve DDB and Frank Cooper talking, who's the CMO of BlackRock. We had Rashad Tabakawala, we had Amanda Gatz, we had Jason Grunberg of CM Group. We were able to get such high caliber, high profile, people as well. I think a lot of that like helps reinforce the, the approach that we had been taking, and also the, the audience that we were looking to attract. Got it.
And then you maybe lastly, kind of a different version of the who's the best fit for the brew. Big companies, small companies, companies in between small and big. How do you think about what types of brands make sense for this collapsed ad unit?
It's companies large and small. I know that's kind of like a cop-out answer. But one of the things that we do, and I think we do well, is that we offer, different types of like tiers within the newsletter. And so, we have a very large primary ad unit that has the logo at the top and an image and 150 words of content. I think that does the best job, but it also, demands the highest price, and that, to not necessarily price out a lot of upstarts and smaller companies that we want to work with. We do also offer, smaller spend units that are still written in our tone and voice. Now, they're, as you kind of like get lower down, they're not as entirely full funnel, because we potentially lose the ability to, to tie a logo, to tie an image. But that, that upper, our primary unit, which is what we call it, really does work. Like if you have the budget for something like that, the results that we see on a regular basis it's awesome to see. And I think our renewal rates with a lot of partners and our success in market, I think just really speaks to the efficacy of that unit.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about tone? I mean, when you you read stories or interviews, listen to interviews with like Austin and Alex, your two co-founders. A big part of, I think, your success has been built on the tone, and you invest a lot now in maintaining that tone and finding people who can that tone. Can you talk a little bit about what that tone is?
Yes. And I got to give a shout out to, Neil Fryman, who's our managing editor, is largely responsible for, for that tone and voice, and for making sure that any of our writers that come in the door go through, very well. Any writer that comes in the door is a very gifted writer. But the molding of that writer into the Morning Brew tone and voice is largely a result of the infrastructure that we've been able to build so that we can scale that. Now, to answer your question, it is witty, it is smart, it is conversational. Those, we're never talking down, we're never making fun. There is a way to write about serious things in a way that is engaging and accessible. And so I would say engaging, accessible, witty, conversational, and smart are kind of like these North Stars for the way in which we write. And I think if you look at any one of those things, they're important. But the union or intersection of those things is what makes Morning Brew's tone and voice unique and different. And, if you put a Morning Brew newsletter up side by side with a lot of other newsletters that, claim, 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, whatever it is, you can still, I think, tell and see, the Morning Brew tone and voice difference.
Right. One of the questions from the audience, which was a build on that, a crowded curation question, referenced paid newsletters, and there's been an explosion in paid newsletters. It seems like there's an explosion in willingness to pay for paid newsletters, which is probably driving that. How do you think about sort of the positioning of Morning Brew as a free newsletter, versus all these emerging paid newsletters?
As someone who runs the ad revenue side of the house, I love it. I think I think that's great, and I think it works. No, it's something that we talk about a lot, actually, internally, and if done right, like the way that we do it, I think it's awesome to keep newsletters free and for anyone that wants them, but that requires I think a better way to monetize them. Mm-hmm. So, I think the way that we do it, where, our ads are in line with the copy and are engaging and interesting, and people actually write back because they like the ad copy and it's working, that enables you to keep the costs down for, consumers at the end of the day. And so that model is very much alive and thriving, but you need to do it right. And so there is absolutely, I think, a really strong place for ad supported, I think, media in general, but specifically, newsletters and email, as long as it's really, it's like an extra level of, hands-on and really working with a partner to monetize your newsletters. Now, there are absolutely some newsletters that I pay for, and, Ben Thompson's Stratechery, for example, is one, and that God bless him, how he's able to go so deep and so smart with so many different topics. Now, I don't know that, we can't rule out that Morning Brew will ever do that. But I think we are very actively thinking about diversifying, our revenue, both inside of the newsletter space, but also outside. When you think about Morning Brew as much more, of a media company and a modern brand, and not just a newsletter brand. So, we're actively looking at other kind of monetization ways, but I don't, $100 to $200, a month, I think is a lot. And I think, at some point that's going to have to start cutting into your OTT app spend. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really great free ad supported content.
Awesome. Jason, if there are follow-ups, do you mind jumping over to the session? It's a breakout session. My colleague Steven is there, and people can ask other questions. Thank you very much, for being here today, sharing your perspectives. We will connect interested parties with you at the end of our conference, and very much appreciate you participating.
Perfect. Sue, thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with everybody after.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely. Bye.